Oops. What's up, y'all? Eric Mulder here with Covert Conversations. I appreciate y'all joining me. I'm not going to hold y'all up. We're going to jump right into the content, but let me lay the groundwork a bit. Recently on the Stephen A. Smith show, his own podcast, he had conservative commentator, Black conservative speaker, Brandon Tatum on to discuss a whole host of issues, primarily based around the issues of race. And they got deep into D.L. Hughley, some of his comments about certain Black folks going to the White House and Donald Trump in general. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into the discussion. And I will chime in when I believe that there's, when I have something I think is pretty important to say. So let's jump right on in.
An author, a radio personality, and he has a strong following on YouTube. By the way, I think it's escalated over 3.4 million subscribers, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. He's a former college football player and former police officer who is the host of the hit show, The Officer Tatum. Please welcome Brandon Tatum, a.k.a. The Officer Tatum, to the Stephen A. Smith Show. What's up, big time? How are you, man? Nice to finally meet you. How's everything?
I'm blessed, man. God is good, man. And I'm really excited to talk to you.
Man, please, the pleasure is all mine, man. Even though, listen, there have been times when you've been critical of me. It's okay. I can take it. Damn it, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. It's no big deal.
Real quick, you know, that's one thing I'll say about Stephen A. Smith that I appreciate. Even though that brother drives me crazy sometimes with how he makes everything about race, but I get it because I used to have the same mindset, the same mentality. He's not afraid or concerned about talking to people who he disagrees with. I think that when it comes to the conservative movement, I think he finds a lot more in common, that he has a lot more in common with us than a lot of folks are willing to admit. But I just want to say how much I appreciate his willingness to, you know, cross the aisle, so to speak, and talk to anybody.
Right. But before I even get into this interview, I need you to tell me, why do people try you physically? I mean, I just pointed out that you're a football player, former football player, police officer, but yet you got some fools out there that be trying you physically. I could understand if they came at me. What the hell are they thinking about coming at you?
Oh, man, you know, Stephen A., really, to be honest, in public, people never say anything to me. You know, a couple non-binaries on the campus of UC Davis decided to lose their mind, which I bet they will never do that again. However, most people, when they see me in person, they realize I'm 6'2", 280. They don't want nothing to do with me.
I would imagine so. I would imagine so. Let me.
You know, I never realized B. Tatum was so big. That's a big boy. I was hovering around that mark about 5 years ago, but I found a ketogenic diet, low carb, and the rest is history. But let's jump back in.
Get to a more civilized situation right now, because obviously you heard me a little bit earlier talking about D.L. Hughley. And before I ask you about him, I wanted to make sure you heard exactly what he had to say in the aftermath of Saquon Barkley, the star running back for the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, electing to go to the White House, and what D.L. Hughley had to say about him or anybody else who happens to be Black that would think about going to the White House. Listen to D.L. Hughley talking on TMZ earlier. Check this out.
14 players said, I'm going to boycott this. Whose side are you on?
I think that it's not just political. What Donald Trump has done and is doing to Black history is unsavory and is undeniable. Donald Trump is deliberately trying to erase Black people's history for whatever quest. He's elevating Christopher Columbus again. So he deliberately is doing things to Black people that isn't just political. And any Black man that does it is going to obviously catch some level of heat. When a Black person does it, when it's a Black person, I can always tell what kind of Black person. I can always tell what they are.
Whoa, wait, what does that mean, Dia?
Saquon Barkley, he had a girlfriend that threw around the N-word a lot and said she wasn't a gold digger and she wasn't messing with no broke N-words. He looks like that kind of guy that is indifferent to what Black people go through.
Last I checked, that was a rap song. I mean, that's Kanye West, Gold Digger back in the day. But that's a conversation for another day, but I will have that conversation about the N-word and its use in general. But if you appreciate what I'm doing here, if you're enjoying this so far, y'all, make sure you like and subscribe and give me a like and a follow if you can.
It's just true. And I think I've noticed that to be consistent with a lot of black people who show up. They have a shoe booty affect to them.
You heard what D.L. Hughley had to say right there. You are a Republican. You have been on the record. You are a supporter of Donald Trump. You heard what D.L. Hughley had to say. Your thoughts?
First of all, D.L. Hughley has been historically one of my favorite comedians. I love D.L. Hughley, but I don't know what he done. I don't know, he bumped his head or something, but he has lost his mind. And it's a shame that he has to go down the path of racism. You know, I've met Donald Trump several times. I've been to the White House several times. Actually, Donald Trump met my dad at a UFC fight not too long ago, and my dad didn't even vote for Trump. So Donald Trump isn't what they're projecting him to be, but also the racism that exists amongst black people. Why is D.L. Hughley, who claimed to be a pro-black man, hating and talking down on another brother? Just because you decide to love a woman that happen to not be black don't mean you're a sellout and you don't understand the black struggle. And Saquon Barkley, who's a rational adult, who wants to play football and enjoy his life and don't have to have a problem with Donald Trump because everybody said he does. I mean, he went and golfed with Donald Trump. He was flying on a, Marine One with Donald Trump. What's the problem with that? Unless you're a racist and you hate white people, you shouldn't have a problem with a brother loving a white person or a brother supporting a president just for the sake of him being the commander-in-chief. And D.L. Hughley just, he bothers me so much because I just don't like what he says about black people, generally speaking, but I can go on forever about it.
Let me chime in real quick. My thoughts are this. Let me discuss a little bit about what he said about Donald Trump supposedly destroying black history. I think there was talk about them changing some of the things that went on at the Black History Museum in Washington, D.C. In case some of y'all never heard it or you have a short memory, let me remind y'all of some of the things that were being shown in the Black History Museum. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. See if I can pull up a graphic or something like that for y'all to see. I can't remember when it was. Oh, here we go. Let me share this with y'all. Let me stop this. Okay, here we go. Hopefully y'all can see this. Let me know if you can see what I have on the screen here. See if I can zoom in a bit better. Okay, this was a few, and we'll get back to the video. I promise y'all that. But this was a few years ago in the Smithsonian Race Guidelines, the Smithsonian Institute, and this was, and right here, the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History. Rational thinking and hard work are white values, okay? And this is the infographic that got them in a whole bunch of trouble that they quickly took down not that long after it first went up. But this is the same museum, and this is what a lot of people, and I got people I know very closely, very intimately, who think that Donald Trump is pulling some type of racist, trying to destroy Black history because of what he's trying to do with the Black History Museum. But pay attention to this. This is some of the stuff that they were talking about. It says aspects and assumptions of whiteness, white culture in the United States. So these are, I'm not going to read the entire thing. You can pull this up. It's a Newsweek article, but it says white dominant culture, or quote unquote whiteness, refers to the way white people and their traditions, attitudes, and ways of life have been normalized over time and are now considered standard practices in the United States. And since white people still hold most of the institutional power in America, we have all internalized some aspect of their white culture, including people of color. So rugged individualism is one of the things that they determine to be a part of whiteness or white culture. The individual is a primary unit. Self-reliance, independence, and autonomy, high valued. and rewarded. So being independent and being self-reliant is a part of white culture, y'all. Individuals assume to be in control of their environment. You get what you deserve. This is just some of the foolishness that we're talking about. We're going to continue to go on. The family structure, the nuclear family, father, mother, 2.3 children is the ideal social unit. Husband as breadwinner and head of the household. Wife as a homemaker and subordinate to the husband. Children should have own rooms, be independent. I don't even know where they get this from. But when it comes to the nuclear family, the husband being the head of the household, wife being subordinate to the husband, these are biblical values. Notice the theme. Seriously, notice the theme. You get what you deserve, reaping what you sow, biblical values, y'all. Okay, let's keep going on. Again, African American History Museum. Emphasis on the scientific method, objective, rational, linear thinking, cause and effect relationships, quantitative emphasis, rational linear thinking, objective thinking, whiteness, according to these people who were working at the African American History Museum. History, based on Northern European immigrants' experience in the United States. It's a part of history. So what are we to ignore it? Heavy focus on British Empire, the primacy of Western, Greek, Roman, and Judeo-Christian traditions. God forbid we have Judeo-Christian traditions at the very foundations of us as a nation, y'all. The very foundations of us as a nation. Our laws, largely rooted in that. Stealing, murder, you name it. Being truthful, sexual morality, even though we've largely moved away from that. But this is what they're calling products of white culture. Religion, Christianity is the norm. We were reared in a country that was founded largely on biblical values. Yes, there's some Roman influence, Greek influence, no doubt about it. But even their cultures were largely impacted as time went on by the biblical worldview. Anything other than Judeo-Christian tradition is foreign. And then let's look at it like this. Almost every country has some type of worldview based on some form of religious belief. Every nation. So why should the United States be any different? Oh, let me back up a little bit. Okay, Protestant work ethic. Listen to this. I missed this one. I don't know how I missed it. Hard work is the key to success. Work before play. If you didn't meet your goals, you didn't work hard enough. Oh my goodness. I'm going to read this one more, the religion one. Christianity is the norm. Anything other than Judeo-Christian tradition is foreign. No tolerance for deviation from single God concept. Now, we know we live in a society where people have a variety of beliefs. I mean, that's part of our freedom of expression, freedom of religion. So it's part of us as our constitution. It's ingrained in our society. But you can't get away from those traditions, y'all. Let me see here. Justice, based on English common law, protect property and entitlements, intent counts. This is utter foolishness. And these are some of the things that Trump was against. Somebody tell me why that's wrong. Trump isn't against Black history. For those of y'all out there who don't seem to understand, he's not against Black history. He's against the history that tells us, or the interpretation of history that tells us that our country was founded on racist principles, that it is inherently racist at its very foundations, at its core, and all of that. And as a result of that, the white man, our society has that white people cannot be separated from their racism. It is ingrained in them. That's what you call implicit bias. That's when implicit bias comes into play. That's when issues such as institutional racism comes into play. Things that we have fought and many of our ancestors have died for, to fight against. You have people out there who are saying that you are in 2025, if you're white, then you are the problem, is basically what they're saying. So you have a group of people who are saying, no, our country has come a mighty long way, and I'm one of them. We have come so far. The racism I dealt with as a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, compared to now, not even close. At 55 years old, y'all, I've seen racism. I've dealt with it. I've seen it on my work. I've dealt with people, skinheads, neo-Nazis, Klansmen, you name it, y'all. I've dealt with those people. And I've seen racism at its ugliest. I had to get up and go to school being the only Black family in our entire neighborhood and have to be called the N-word on an almost daily basis, pretty much up until about 6th grade. And even in the 90s, early 90s, when I was living in Indiana, I dealt with racism pretty intensely. But since coming out to the West Coast, and even in the couple of years when I moved down south, moved to Arkansas, I haven't seen any hint of racism that I can recall. Is it there? Obviously. I'm not even going to get into that debate. Of course, we know it's real. But as far as it being the same force within our culture, impacting Black folks on a day-to-day basis like it was 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago, as some people actually try to argue, man, miss me with all that, y'all. I do not want to hear that. We have come so far. And to try to equate the Black struggle today, so-called Black struggle today, with what our ancestors went through during Jim Crow, during slavery, prior to and even up until and somewhat after the Civil Rights Movement, y'all have got to be kidding me. And for people like me, but who think like me, especially as a Black man, oh, you know, I'm a sellout. Oh, I'm an Uncle Tom. Insanity, straight up. That's the only way I can articulate it. It is utter insanity, and it shows how far we've fallen as a society and how race is being used today, despite the fact that we had a Black man as president for 2 straight terms who was overwhelmingly voted in by white folks, despite the fact that white folks, and I know I'm taking a long time with this, y'all, forgive me, but these points have to be made straight up. In spite of the fact that we had a minority woman sitting in the White House the last 4 years, doing a crappy job, I might add, but be that as it may, Black politicians all over, more Black college graduates than ever before, more Black millionaires and billionaires than any time in our history. And yet we want to turn around and say how bad it is in the United States. There is no society, there's no country in the world that offers the freedoms and opportunities that the United States offers Black folks. None whatsoever. You show me one that offers the same freedoms of speech, of religious practices, and opportunity to grow and expand yourself than the United States. I'll wait. Forgive me, y'all, but that had to be said straight up. Let's get back to the video.
What did you think about what he had to say as it pertained to Trump and the administration essentially trying to eradicate Black history? You know, basically, you know, whatever initiatives, executive orders, there's a lot of things that we can point to that people have believed that's what he was doing. What do you make of that and what Trump has done since he's been in office?
I think it's absolutely asinine to suggest that Donald Trump is trying to erase Black history. That's the craziest thing ever. D.L. Hughley don't have any evidence whatsoever to make a claim like that, other than having Trump derangement syndrome. Donald Trump in his first term, he gave permanent funding to HBCUs. Donald Trump literally had every HBCU president in the Oval Office talking to them about things that they can do to improve Black universities. Donald Trump, the operations zones, and I mean, you can go down the list and all the things that he's done that help Black in the Black community. The people that have been a part of his administration. Is Byron Donalds a sellout? Is Clarence Thomas a sellout? I mean, all of these other
Some people
that
would
are
say
very
Clarence Thomas,
successful.
though. Officer Tatum, you know, some people would say that about Clarence Thomas. They do feel like Clarence Thomas has been one of those individuals that has no interest in pushing forth Black causes at all. That has been said about him for decades. Long before Donald Trump came along.
And it's because of Black people who inherently are in their consciousness are racist individuals, because they don't like Clarence Thomas because he got a white woman. But let me tell you this. I bet you $1 million you won't see D.L. Hughley talking about Bubba Wallace, the NASCAR driver that did the fake hoax with the noose. You'd never hear him talk about him because he's willing to say all this activist stuff that he's not really believing in. But he got a white woman. So D.L. Hughley is inconsistent with his projection against Black people. I'll just say this. Black people cannot exist in America isolating themselves in a cocoon with other Black people who, to be honest, hate on them more than white people do. And D.L. Hughley is a perfect example of it. Why won't you uplift your brothers? Why won't you celebrate the brothers that got invited to the White House that won the Super Bowl? Why wouldn't you? Because
I think the main reason DL wouldn't say that is because he is convinced that Donald Trump is a racist. He has bought the narrative that he hates Black folks and that everything he does is I wouldn't say designed. I can't speak exactly for the man, but that a large aspect of what he does is anti-Black. But just think about it. Donald Trump is probably one of the most, if not the most pro-life president we've had. Pro-life. What culture, what ethnic group is impacted the most by abortion? Who gets slaughtered in the womb more than Black folks? Who was impacted mostly by illegal immigration? And Brandon is going to get into this here shortly. But historically, it has been known that low wage, low income earning Black males are the ones who are most negatively impacted by illegal immigration. Why? Because when you have an illegal coming in and working, you can pay him under the table. You don't have to pay him minimum wage. So these big companies around the country would much rather hire somebody like that who's not here legally, where you can get away with paying them less than they're worth. You can get away with that. And who is most largely impacted by that negatively? Black folks. But we have been so convinced by our society that the Democratic Party is for us, is for the Black man. We have been brainwashed, literally brainwashed by decades of them repeating the same old arguments, same tired lies, to where the vast majority of us just buy it hook, line, and sinker. I told my pastor a couple of years ago, great brother, white man, I told him, my former pastor, I told him that when you're born as a Black man in the United States, you get they do your fingerprints and they check your blood and they slap your butt, and then they hand you a Democratic voter card. That's pretty much how indoctrinated voting Democrat is in the Black community. And oftentimes we don't even try to deal with the issues. And many of us who profess to be followers of Jesus Christ will go in the voting booth, and I harp on this all the time, go in the voting booth knowing the Democratic Party's stance on the LGBT movement, especially their stance when it comes to transgenderism, even more detailed, transitioning children, knowing their stance on abortion, knowing their stance when it comes to religious freedom or freedoms of speech, how many of them will try to say that our expression of the harsh or the hard truths of the Christian faith would be deemed hate speech by many of them. They hate the nuclear family, a husband and wife, children. Yet many of us know that, but yet we'll still walk in that voting booth and vote Democrat time and time again, knowing that what they do, the policies that they stand for, God hates. But many of us will walk in there and not give a damn about that because it's all about the color. It's all about the struggle, y'all. It's ridiculous. And more people need to be called out for that, need to be called out for that hypocrisy.
Because you just don't like Donald Trump. And I guarantee you'll never hear D.L. Hughley say anything negative about Donald Trump before he became a Republican president. That's why I don't have no respect for these dudes. And then I'll tell you this, Stephen A., they don't never talk about the thugs in our community. They never talk about the problems. I mean, consistently talk about the ailments that are in our community, talk about, you know, abortions that go on in our community higher than anywhere else in the country. They don't talk about the murder rate in our community that's higher than anywhere else in the country. They don't talk about the education system that has failed Black people. They don't talk about these politicians that put illegal aliens before they put Black people.
Tell it.
Look at Brandon Johnson in Chicago. Billions of dollars spent on illegal aliens, won't spend a dime on Black folks. Look at Barack Obama. He came from Chicago. Can't name me not one policy that benefited Black folks, especially not in Chicago. So D.L. Hughley won't talk about these brothers. They won't talk about these hoodwinking snake oil salesmen that are acting like they're activists. For instance, Reverend Al Sharpton. These people are the most disingenuous individuals I've ever seen in my life. They can go on a boycott of Target, not realizing that there's Black people that got product in Target. So why would you boycott Target and in the Black communities where Black people work at the Target? How about we stop wasting energy being victims and start supporting Black people? Have a march to support Black businesses, where we spend our money in Black businesses, where we put our money in Black banks, where we send our kids to Black universities. Stephen A., you know why you would never see them do that? Because they wouldn't dare put their money in a Black bank. They wouldn't dare send their kids to Black universities. And D.L. Hughley and the rest of them won't dare live in a Black neighborhood. Ask Stephen A. where he live at. I guarantee you, we look it up, he live around number of white folks. So this is why I don't believe these people and why they're detrimental to Black people in America.
I think he nailed a lot of the good points about the hypocrisy of it all. We live in a society, back in the day, those of y'all who were into hip hop at all, back in the 80s, around my time period, when I was in high school, we had self-destruction, the Stop the Violence movement, where you had a bunch of rappers. You had Heavy D, MC Light, KRS-One, Public Enemy, and more get together and rap about the violence in the Black community. You had All in the Same Gang, I think Gang or Game, by the West Coast rappers getting together, trying to stop the violence in the inner city violence. But nowadays, God forbid you do something like that. Oh, you're caping for the white man. Oh, you're trying to deflect. But yet, at the same time, they try to act like the violence in the Black community is ignored. The violence against Black women is ignored. But when we talk about it, you try to say that we're selling out because we're trying to align with white folks. In the meantime, just as Brandon Tatum said, we in the Black community kill each other overwhelmingly more than any other society kills each other. We all know that Black people are more in, around each other, just like whites and Hispanics. Oftentimes, many of us will be in the same communities, culture-wise. And of course, the predominant amount of violence you would think would be Black on Black, white on white, Hispanic on Hispanic, so on and so forth. But once you look at the numbers, and if you go to the FBI, if you go to FBI crime report, you'll see overwhelmingly, it's not even close, the amount of murders that are committed when it's Black on Black. You compare it to any other ethnic group, not even close. If you don't believe me, look it up, straight up, you'll find it. And one thing that's people definitely don't like to talk about is when it comes to race on race violence, Black on white, white on Black, Black on Hispanic, Hispanic on Black or white, however you want to mix it up. The sad reality, and I say this with no glee in my heart or no joy in my mouth, the sad reality is that the vast majority of those crimes all around, you'll see overwhelmingly more black against white violence than you'll see white against black violence. These are my claims, y'all. That's the FBI claims. These are the FBI numbers. It's been consistently like that for years. But until these so-called black activists, these so-called black power folks start addressing that issue, I honestly don't want to hear anything you have to say, because you cry and you yell and you come all out and you're all up in arms when a white police officer kills a black man. But God forbid we talk about the number of violent attacks from black folks on other ethnic groups, or the amount of violence we do against each other. God forbid we talk about that. So if we're really sincere and serious about the violence on black people, we first and foremost need to address the violence we commit on each other.
I got to take a break to pay a bill. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more in just a second. What I would challenge you on, Officer Tatum, and I respect the hell out of you on where you're coming from. I don't agree with everything you said, but let me say this. A lot of the litany of things that you labeled in terms of problems that exist in our community, problems that exist in our country, you're absolutely right on point. I'm not here to challenge that at all. I love the last part that you made about how they were so focused on immigration, they were so focused on woke culture and cancel culture that they forgot about black folks along the way, the folks on the left. I totally agree with you about that. I've been crying that for the longest time. And when I think about D.L. Hughley, I've said this before you came on the show today. I'm like, listen, you can't sit up there and talk mess about somebody, all right, and then expect them to do business with you. You've got to be willing to compromise. You got to be willing to cross the aisle, figuratively speaking, in his case, because he's not a politician. You got to be willing to work. You can't be about denigrating the president for every damn thing. Like there isn't a single thing that he says that he doesn't do right. Everything he says isn't wrong. Everything he says isn't off kilter. Some things he said he does have a point about. There's no question about that. I push back on you when you try to lay, like somebody like a D.L. Hughley, when he pointed out how Trump challenged his nationality, citizenship, whether he was born in the United States or not. Let's not forget that. When we point to issues, when we talk about how, what have they done for us or what hasn't been done for us, when we see a guy like Clarence Thomas and others, you speak against affirmative action, but you benefited from affirmative action. When we hear Trump come into office and literally a plane collides with a helicopter and he's blaming DEI with no evidence whatsoever, and they're questioning the meritocracy of something or the merits of something, and all of those kind of things are taking place, we do find ourselves, and I think D.L. Hughley is absolutely entitled to find himself uncomfortable with some of the things that he is seeing. You see, he might have gone too far by saying what he said. I think he did. Anybody that goes to the White House, anybody that communicates with Trump, I think that's beyond the pale.
Back that
but
up a bit.
To the White House, anybody that communicates with Trump, I think that's beyond the pale. But him being skeptical, him questioning some things, I don't think that's off kilter, Officer Tatum. I don't.
Let me just throw this in here real quick. I won't take long on this note. When it came down to the helicopter crash into the plane, Trump, and correct me if I'm wrong, did Trump say it was DEI, or did he just throw that out there and ask if that was an issue? And if you're not familiar with the reality of the impact that DEI has had on our society when it comes to the air traffic control issue around the country, I'm going to link a video, or do me a favor, go to my channel, Cobra Conversations, and look up DEI activists. You'll see a video where this guy who was working, I think it was in Atlanta, who worked for the air traffic control board or whatever, who was literally giving answers to tests to black candidates. And it was caught on audio. So I don't think there's an issue with asking the question whether DEI played a role, because for years there have been lawsuits that have gone back and forth arguing that talented, qualified white candidates are being overlooked because they want to have a more quote unquote diverse applicants or group of air traffic control employees or people who work in that industry. So that is a thing. And I don't think it's wrong for Trump to have brought that up. I think a lot of people, Stephen A. included in this area, I would assume, just is unaware of some of these issues. And he's got a lot going on, so I can't hate on the man.
Well, Stephen A., if his skepticism was genuine, I agree. My father has skepticism of Donald Trump and things that are genuine. My dad is a good man. He's acting in good faith, and he don't hate white people.
But how do you know it's not genuine?
I think he has a big issue, and he hate white people deep down in his soul. And that's why everything white people do, he has a criticism. When white people get in a shooting against black people, he has a criticism. I guarantee you I haven't seen his take on the kid in Dallas that stabbed a young man in the heart. I guarantee he took the side of the black man. Let's go back to the birther thing. The birther is argument about the validity of Barack Obama's birth certificate started with Hillary Clinton. And there was a whole bunch of other politicians outside of Donald Trump. Donald Trump piggybacked off of things that people had already established.
And there is actually an argument to be made, whether you want to believe it or not. Candace Owens, and I know how controversial she is, a lot of folks don't necessarily feel her these days, but she did an excellent breakdown when it came down to the question. This is the question of where Barack Obama was born. And I don't think there's a problem I don't think there's a problem asking these questions. And just because you ask these questions doesn't make you a racist. People really need to get that foolishness out of our minds. Just assuming race is at the core of every issue, it drives me nuts. And trust me, I get it. I used to have the same mentality. But race isn't the main or isn't the only issue in this world. And we really need to understand that.
D.L. Hughley, I mean, we can go down a list of all the other things that you said. His skepticism of policy. What policy is he referring to that Donald Trump is doing that's against black people? Last time I checked, building the economy helps build black people's pocketbook. Last time I checked, when you're talking about immigration and getting all these illegal aliens out of our country, spending taxpayer dollar, black people pay taxes. That helps and benefits the black community.
Thank you.
When you think about Clarence Thomas, this is a black man who worked his way up and decided that we do not need affirmative action because it discriminates against all people. It discriminates against black people because there are black people who are qualified that are not necessarily associated with this affirmative action thing. You know, they may have a family, they come from a good family, a good household, and they're not associated with getting a handout because their parents did the work and their parents put them in a position where they're not considered lower income or people who benefit from affirmative action. But also, it's time for us to move forward. We can't keep living in the past, Stephen A. I mean, my God, I just saw a movie that came out called Sinners. I haven't watched it, but the preview of the movie and some of the dialogue around the movie is another movie projecting black people in the 1930s, and it's the white man against the black man. When are we going to stop this mess? You know, the Underground Railroad's proliferation and success didn't come from just black people. There were good white people who never owned slaves, who never had nothing to do with slavery, who risked their lives to help Harriet Tubman get black people to freedom. In the history of this country, there has always been good white people that have done positive things to affect change that benefited black people.
And another thing that I've always said, I've long said, was that you look at the Republican Party, which was at its core an abolitionist and anti-slavery abolitionist political organization. Many people have no idea about that foundation. They were largely brought together out of their hatred for slavery, understanding that black people, African folks who were brought over on the ships and their ancestors were also made in the image of God and therefore had inherent value and worth. Again, these Protestant Judeo-Christian values that the African American History Museum was hating on not that long ago, that black folks were made in the image of God just as they were, and who put their lives, as Brandon Tatum said, on the line, put their lives on the line to fight for the cause of black folks, and fight for black folks being freed from slavery. There were a large number of white folks who were lynched back in the day because they were abolitionists. So let's get all the facts together. Let's understand history and not just always point to the white man this, the white man bad, black man good. It's insane. Or the minority is good and the white man is just all evil. If we're going to talk about our history, and we should, we need to make sure we have a well-rounded understanding of that. And people like those folks behind the 1619 Project, garbage, many historians, black, white, all across the spectrum, color spectrum, will argue that the 1619 Project was a bunch of garbage and that it painted a poor history of what really went down in our country. So again, if we're going to talk about history, why is it always the oppression of the black man? And why is it that we rarely talk about stories of black folks like the ones on my wall here, Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, people who rose up and overcame during those difficult times? But again, there's a political agenda, and I really want folks to get this through our heads, that there is a political and social agenda that's really at its core is meant to dismantle our nation and bring in a socialistic, Marxist, communistic, largely government. That's what these people want to do. So what do? They talk about race. They make everything a race issue, everything. Forget the evidence. You see a black cop shoot a white, you see a white cop shoot a young black man or a black man in general, oh, it must be racially motivated. Then come to find out that that was a bunch of nonsense, that it wasn't racially motivated whatsoever. But that's basically what we do. That's what we've done overwhelmingly. And it has done nothing but cause us harm. Because instead of being an individual, yeah, that value, and being strong and trying to establish your own wealth and being independent and self-reliant, they force us to want to have wait for a handout from the government. The government, seriously, when we can do for ourselves, it's truly pathetic.
Now, there have been racists, there have been knuckleheads, but generally speaking, in the totality of circumstances, in the American experience, there's nowhere else on planet Earth black people can go and benefit and prosper and have a level of success than in the United States of America. And there are so many corporations and so many lenders and investors that are white that have propelled black people to a level of success that we've never seen before. I mean, Stephen A., your contract is very handsome.
Right.
And I don't think that they're treating you improperly because you black. It's because you earned it.
No,
it's because you went years of being consistent,
right,
speaking your mind, taking the heat, and then you're getting paid.
My response to that would be, that's true. I'm very, very fortunate, but I went through a lot before I got to this point, and it took me significantly longer to achieve what others who look differently than me might have captured sooner. But I do get your point, because I don't sit there and look back, and I don't view every white person as racist, and I don't view every policy as racist. A matter of fact, one of the reasons I've never felt that way about Donald Trump in terms of racism, Nazis, and all of this other stuff is because I knew him before he ran for office. And I knew a whole bunch of us that knew him before he ran for office. And we never said that stuff about him. Neither did Oprah, neither did a whole bunch of other people. There was a whole bunch of people communicating with Donald Trump, befriending Donald Trump, socializing with Donald Trump, and we never had any problem. So I view him as somebody that's catering to a constituency because he knew he wasn't going to win the left. He wasn't going to win the Democratic nomination because that was going to Hillary Rodham Clinton. They would have made sure he didn't win that. So he went the other side, and he, being a businessman, is willing to negotiate his way through anything. That's how I view him, but that's just me.
And another great point. Now, let me say this about Stephen A. Now, he's showing himself to be a bit more understanding and judicious here and in more recent conversations he's had with people, like when he went on the PBD podcast. But Stephen A. has a history of crying racism every time something don't look right and is dealing with a black person. Automatically, he goes there. And I say that because I was a fan of First Take. I used to watch First Take every single morning. It was like religiously. I was watching First Take. I loved him and Skip on the show. Not so much when Max Kellerman came on, because then it became all about social justice, especially when Trump came into office. My goodness, it made me sick to my stomach. Everything was just about how racist and it became a political show. If I want to watch a political show, I'm going to turn on a political YouTube channel, something that I enjoy, something that I want to watch. I'm going to turn on Sports Center. I didn't turn on First Take to watch their breakdown of Donald Trump and what he did in office. But that's what it became. And that's why their ratings plummeted. But I love Stephen A. Smith. I would love the opportunity one day to be able to have a conversation with him. And I think him talking to more and more Black conservatives, especially Black conservatives, because I think it's easy for him when he sits down with the Dave Rubin, semi-conservative, or when he sits down with a Pat Bet-David, when he sits down with or Sean Hannity, it's easy for him to talk about the race issue. Not so much with PBD, but you get what I'm saying. Hannity and some of these other Black conservatives, Jesse Waters, some of the shows that he goes on, it's easy for him to talk about race. But when he's sitting there in front of Candace Owens or Brandon Tatum or Byron Donalds, he can't go to, he doesn't have that avenue to go there. And then they can reframe the argument to get him to think a little bit differently. And I'm hoping that this little, what seems to be some semblance of a political awakening that Stephen A. is going through, I'm hoping that, especially with the abortion issue, because he is a professing Christian, but I'm hoping that some folks will really be able to get into his head that automatically assuming race is involved in everything is really just silly.
I want to get to you in this regard, Officer Tatum. You talked about your dad and how he didn't vote for Donald Trump. Are you a lifelong Republican, or are you somebody that was a Democrat that transitioned to being a Republican because of the things that you've articulated since you've been sitting on this show?
That's a great question. You know, in America, and I say this is unfortunate in part, that when you Black, you come out a Democrat. Because when I was young, we didn't even vote. We weren't even deep into politics. But you just knew if you were going to vote, you voted for a Democrat, because the Democrat was for the Black people and the Republicans were racist white people. That's what it was.
That's true.
And then when I grew up, I started being more informed and started looking at policy positions as a Christian man. I say, well, wait a minute. I don't think I agree with nothing that the Democrats are doing. I don't think I agree with any of it. I believe in God. I believe putting God first. I believe in marriages between a man and a woman. I mean, you go down a list. I don't want to pay no crazy amount of taxes just for them to be throwing your money like they at a strip club. So I'm saying, when I look at the policy position, not the emotional manipulation of empathy that I see from the Democrat side and from D.L. Hughley and others.
You put that perfect.
I look at policy and I say, well, the policy of lowering taxes makes sense. Thomas Sowell, the great economists, have already articulated, any economist will tell you, when they lower the taxes and taxes seem to be reasonable to the American people, they pay more into the treasury. When you raise the taxes, people try to evade taxes. Therefore, there's lower money coming into the treasury of the United States of America. So I'm for lowering taxes. I'm for, immigration policy. It don't make no sense whatsoever that people have to wait 10 years to come over here. And I think it's prejudice against some of the African nations because they don't get to just walk through the southern border. People waiting in line forever, paying all this money, fleeing actual persecution. And they don't have an opportunity because we have 20 million illegal aliens coming from the southern border right into our country. And D.L. Hughley didn't say a thing that I've seen about when Joe Biden was doing this and screwing Black people over. Because where do they go, Stephen A? When these illegals come into America, they don't go to the foothills. They're not going to the affluent neighborhoods. They're not welcome at Martha's Vineyard. They are going and competing for low-skilled work in the inner cities. And therefore, they're putting Black people out of employment because Black people are working for citizen wages, which means that you're an American citizen, you have to work for minimum wage. These people coming over here, that you can pay them under the table.
I'm popular for saying this, Officer Tatum. When white folks catch a cold, Black folks catch pneumonia. It's always worse for us than it is for them. I bring up that that statement because of what you just said. When you think about open borders and illegal immigrants crossing the borders, ultimately you're alluding to it having a detrimental effect on the Black community. Is that your way of saying that you felt the left did that to us, that they just disregarded Black folks?
Stephen A., they've been giving us the middle finger since I can remember.
If you haven't paid attention at any time throughout this video, make sure you pay attention to this part, because I think he articulates the point, the plight of many Black conservatives that forced us, that drove us from the Democratic Party.
All the way back from the Ku Klux Klan. They have never supported Black people whatsoever. They hoodwinked us into getting us on food stamps and getting us with government assistance, having us to abandon our own success. We had our own bus line. We had our own schools. We had all this stuff. They tricked us into believing that the white man was the cure to our own issues.
Okay.
They tricked us. And then now look at us, Stephen A. They don't have to bid for our vote. They got our vote hook, line, and sinker.
Well,
so they're never going to do nothing for us.
That part I get. But when you say they did nothing, I'm thinking about civil rights legislation. I'm thinking about infrastructure. I'm thinking about Jim Crow laws, the eradication of it. I'm thinking about the access to capital that was given, that Black folks had date from the 60s and beyond that we didn't have before that. Are you saying that's the Republicans?
That's Republican, unanimous Republican votes for the civil rights. The Democrats filibustered the Civil Rights Act, the longest filibuster in history until Booker just did what he did. Mm-hmm. But the Democrats were not in support of that. That was the Republican Party that was in support of that. And then let's go down the list. If these things were benefiting Black people, why are we still complaining today? We've been voting for Democrats for, 40, 50 years now, lockstep, and we still complaining. We still don't have the rights that we want. We still don't have equality in America. Racism is still plaguing our community, according to Black people. So what have they been doing this whole time? And when you look at it, they have just secured our vote, and they don't have to do nothing for us. And this is what we've created, Stephen A. We've created an environment where we don't benefit from none of it, because the Democrats don't have to work because they know I already got us. The Republicans don't need to work because they can win without us.
I've been saying that.
Black women voted at 90-some% for Democrats. Stephen A., Donald Trump won in a landslide. You give it 2 more election cycles. Illegal aliens and Hispanics are going to be the majority minority. Therefore, Black people can vote 100% for Democrats, and they're not going to have any leverage in the political environment. And I'll tell you this. The Democrats, look at their platform. They want women to have abortions. They don't support a marriage. They don't support God and things the way the Republicans do. What does that do to the inner city Black communities or Black communities in general? We're not getting married. Baby daddy, baby mama drama out of control. We have an abortion more than anybody else. Obesity is out of control in the Black community, which is one of the.
I so loved what he was saying. I so loved his breakdown, because we have been convinced that it was a few years ago, might have been a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, Chris Rock had a special talking about a comedy special on Netflix. And the issue of abortion came up. And he talked about, I think a woman has a right to do what she wants to do, even though this argument is so lame and weak. A woman has a right to do what she wants to do with her own body. The baby being aborted is not her own body. For the record, that's not your body. That's another body. You are carrying it, but that is another human being existing inside of you. But as soon as he said that, you could just hear all the women in the audience, and predominantly Black women, and it broke my heart. But I wasn't shocked either, that you just hear them, just cheering and loving it, celebrating the destruction of your own offspring. When you couple the homicide rate, the obesity rate, like he mentioned, hypertension, all the cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, you couple all these issues with the abortion, the healthcare crisis in the Black community, the murder crisis, the murder rate, you put all these factors together, we are, when it's all said and done, we are our biggest enemy. black folks are our worst enemy. It ain't the white man. It ain't the racist system. It's what we do to each other. We are solely responsible for hundreds of thousands of dead black folks every year by our own hands, by our own forks and spoons, by our own choices. We are. When we look in the mirror, that's where the biggest problem is. It ain't the police. The amount of black folks killed by the police compared to the amount of black folks killed by black on black crime, by homicides, by abortion, not even close, y'all. Wake up, straight up. I get so passionate about these topics because Brandon Tatum nails it perfectly. We have been hoodwinked. We have been manipulated to believe that these Democrats actually give a damn about us. When this entire immigration issue, if you watch any local news networks, if you watch New York, if you watch what went on in LA, especially Chicago, you saw black folks in the inner city, which were being overwhelmed by these illegal immigrants, screaming and crying, saying, "What about us? What about us?" They were kicking our kids out. They were kicking our kids out of school. They were giving benefits to illegals, free healthcare, free vehicles, free housing, while black folks are still on the streets. Some of them were struggling. And this is all by our own doing, because what do? We turn around and we vote Democrat every single year, time and time again. The same people willing to abandon us because they're trying to create a brand new voter base of illegals and trying to legalize them at the expense of black folks. Come on, y'all. Come on. It's ridiculous. Thank you, Chloe, for this information right here. 664 black babies. I haven't checked this information, but what I do recall recently, that sounds about right. Black babies are aborted each day in the United States. But yet we want to cry and scream. And I'm not saying we should ignore if a black man is wrongfully killed by a police officer. I'm not saying we should ignore that at all. I'm a retired police officer. I care probably more about that than anybody because I care about it from both aspects. I care about justice from the side of a average everyday citizen, and I care about and I'm passionate about a solid, strong, just police force. But yet we have been so manipulated. Again, I can't say this enough, y'all. We have been blinded by them making everything out to be race. You preach race and call something racism or call an individual racist enough times, whether it's factual or not, people eventually start believing it. The same Donald Trump that they hate so passionately, so much. Prior to him saying he was going to run as a Republican, he was on The View. They're cooing and hugging him and tripping over themselves to give him love on Oprah Winfrey, getting awards from the NAACP, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, all these folks. He was in every rap video. Every rapper was talking about Donald Trump, loving him. But as soon as that man said that he was a Republican, he became public enemy number one. And we were told that we should hate this man. It is utterly insane, folks. The amount of brainwashing that has taken place in our society.
The biggest plagues in the black community and the leading cause of death, which is hypertension and heart disease. What has the Democrats done about it? Nothing. The Republicans with RFK is saying we need to make sure we have better foods. We need to make sure the SNAP program on prioritizing soda to our young people, which a lot of black people are on the SNAP program. That's the difference in policy position. But D.L. Hughley, he'll never talk about that. He will never talk about the fact that we've given our trust to the Democrat Party and they fix nothing.
I'm going to invite him on here. I'm going to make sure that I play these clips for you. I've met him over the years a couple of times. He's always been cool with me, even though he's been critical of me from time to time too. I'm a big boy. Like I said, I can take it. It's no big deal. But I'm definitely going to drop this education you dropping on him.
And either he will say there was a party switch, and go to my videos. I did a live a few months back going into detail of the lie of the party switch. Either he'll say that or he'll try to deflect. It'll be one or the other. Or, I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll be honest and say, hey, he didn't know. He wasn't aware. But, man, I could go on and on with these issues here. But I think that wrapped it up really well. I wanted to keep this to about an hour. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. If you haven't done so and you appreciate this content, make sure you give me a like and you give me a subscribe. Comment down below what your thoughts are, whether you agree with me or not. I appreciate it. These issues are at the core of our culture. And what you'll see consistently is a large link between a biblical worldview and the antichrist, the anti-Christian worldview. What we're seeing is a consistent clash. And one group, one aspect of our society has convinced the world that the biblical worldview is something to be avoided and something to be feared and something to be hated. But again, I'd love to know what you think. Comment down below. But before you go, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And God bless y'all. I appreciate y'all showing up, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.